Welcome to Crypt Theory, where we go into the unknown, the unexplainable, and the dark histories of our world. Let's get into it. So, today we're talking about Bigfoot's snowy brother, the Yeti, the abominable Snowman, if you want to call it. The story is originating from Mount Everest in India. So this is gonna be the first non-North American thing we do, and it's not gonna be the last, 'cause this is the school. It is an Indian main. It originates in India. So with it originating in India, which that's huge of itself. That means it's gonna have a lot of lore and a lot of outside interference from non-indigenous Indian people, which is gonna be interesting because as last episode went, it was Bigfoot, and that was pretty much all American interests and stuff mainly. So this is going to be big because I think this is more well known than Bigfoot around the world, I would say. I would say around the world. This is more well known than Bigfoot. So this is going to be interesting on how this shapes up to be. So the Yeti, abominable snowman, has huge of itself. It's been imagined in so many different ways, so many different ideas of what it looks like. From what I understand, it is like a bigger snowy Bigfoot. That's pretty much it. And if dates check right, this was cited before Bigfoot, because this was the first recorded sighting of it is 1832. So it's before Bigfoot. So this is an interesting thing where we call it, a lot of people recognize it as Bigfoot's brother. I think technically, if with the legends falling in line, this would technically be a father of Bigfoot if it was connected somehow. They say they're connected somehow. I don't know how. But they say they do. So I'm not gonna go against what a lot of things. Just a little bit of name stuff. The abominable snowman, coined in 1921. They're not 100. Doesn't say who. Where I research. So if somebody can find that and type it in the comments, that would be very, very helpful, and I would be very, very grateful for that. Because I couldn't find it, who coined the name Abominable Snowman. But what we mainly know, the Yeti was adopted by the type it in the comments, would be very, very Tibetan Buddhist that live around in that area. What we mainly know, a big reporting signing. I guess this guy was a big scientist at the time. Peter Brine he was reported that he found a Yeti footprint in 1948, which is interesting because at that time, that would 1948. So that's World War II-ish. Yeah, World War II-ish. So that's in the heat of World War II. So that's interesting to think about. At that time, that would 1948. So that's World War II. On March 9th. Yeah, World War II-ish. So that's of 1954, the Daily Mail they printed an article that describes the expedition teams that were hunting this thing at this time. The 50s and 60s were huge
for
time
the
for a
Daily
bunch of these
Mail
reporters and stuff
they printed
to be looking
that described
into a lot of these
teams that were hunting this thing at this
cryptid
time.
creatures and all that, like
The 50s and
Bigfoot,
60s were
your Wendigos, your Mothmans, all that
huge
great
time
stuff,
for a bunch of
including the
reporters and
Yeti.
stuff
And
to
a
be
lot of people were
looking
hunting this thing.
into a lot of these
I would
cryptid
think
creatures and
more
all
than
that, like
Bigfoot was, because this was
Bigfoot,
more of a national
your
attention thing
Wendigos, your
than
Mothman,
just a Northern American thing and some
including the
outside
Yeti,
European sources
and a
compared.
lot of people were
So,
hunting this thing.
besides that, they found a alleged
more
Yeti
than
scalp.
Bigfoot was,
So
'cause this was more of a national attention thing than
a dome piece of a
just
Yeti. How they got it, I'm not sure. It doesn't say. They found it in the. I'm gonna try to pronounce this. Pang Boshe. I think, or Pang Bosh. I think monastery, some monastery. The hairs were a black to dark brown, in dim light.
The hairs were
and it looked like a red fox apparently in sunlight, which I think is weird. If it's looking, because foxes are always naturally reddish, so I think it's just weird. It's odd, to say the least.
It looked like a.
Hair was analyzed by Professor Frederick Wood Jones, an expert in human and comparative anatomy. So this was looked at by a top professor that knew what he was doing, and top doctor or whatever, looking into this, seeing what was going on. Which it's interesting because during the study, hairs were bleached, cut into sections, analyzed microscopically so they can make sure, which I think is very interesting because none of these studies really. The thing with the thing to compare to Bigfoot is that it's insane how Bigfoot there was nothing. There's nothing at all. Footprints, pictures, but nothing so concrete as like a scalp or hair. And the Yeti has that. What a lot of depictions get wrong is from this it looks like the Yeti doesn't have the normal white fur as it normally would.
And the Yeti has
which
that.
I think is weird.
What a lot of
that it's been so surrounded by snow. You'd think it would be conditioned to white, but no. At the same time, I think because we group it together as a community for the with Mount Everest and how snowy it is in the Himalaya mountains. I think it's just as a community and as a whole, that we think it's gonna be white because it's snowy, and as normally creatures that live in the snow for long periods of time and that are there, that they're inhabited there, they have whiter fur or brighter colors of fur, which I think is super interesting.
Creatures that live in the snow for long periods of time and that are there.
It was the research consisted of micrographs of hairs and comparing them to known animals such as bears and orangutans, which I think is interesting. They compared it to bears, and out of everything, orangutans. I would think they would go with like a gorilla or something like that, but orangutan makes sense to an extent. I'm no expert on orangutans or anything, but
they would go with like a gorilla or something like that, but orangutan.
Sure. It's very odd. The legend of the Yeti has been passed down so many generations by indigenous people.
It's very odd.
Like
the legend of
the Buddhists that lived up there. Just indigenous people near that area, passed down from generation to generation, which I think why the story gets so mixed up
Buddhists
as
that lived up
long fairy
there.
tales do.
Just indigenous people.
So there's
near
that.
area. Passed on from generation to generation, which I think why
Numerous
the story is
expeditions
so
have
mixed
been
up
done. All this,
as
and this.
long fairy tales do.
Which
So there's that.
this makes me think this might be the most well-known and researched cryptid on the list I'm doing.
All this, and this.
I think this
which-
might be. I'm not 100% sure. I believe
This
so
makes me
though.
think this might be the
If
most
I'm wrong,
well-known and
sorry.
researched cryptid
It
on the
should be
list I'm
though. I
doing.
believe so.
I think this might be. I'm not.
It
sure,
remains
I
unknown
believe
if this
so.
thing actually exists or what they found was something religious.
Should be though. I believe so.
Like a religious scalp days of bull or something. I don't know.
unknown if
It
this
could have
thing
been
actually
some
exists or what
religious
they found
item
was
and they didn't
something
realize it. As I
religious.
said, they found it in a monastery, so you
Um,
never really know
or
what it
some- I
was
don't-
used
I don't
for,
know.
what it really
It could have been
is.
some religious item and they didn't realize it. As I said,
Yeah,
they found it in a
footprints are a big
monastery.
thing with a lot of cryptids.
Know
Footprints,
what it was used for,
footprints.
what it really is.
Which I think is interesting. Because footprints can really
Yeah,
come from
footprints
anything,
are
but if they
big-
look huge, I mean, I understand to put a
footprints.
footprint around, you have to be pretty heavy.
Which I think is interesting.
It'd be pretty darn heavy to do that,
Because
so
footprints can
it's
really
gonna be
come from
interesting.
anything, but if it looks huge-
Eyewitness,
I mean, I
those
understand.
aren't reliable.
Be pretty heavy.
With Bigfoot and a lot of other
Pretty
cryptids,
heavy to do that,
so aren't
so
always
it's gonna be
reliable.
interesting.
And at that
Eyewitness,
altitudes, without the
those are
proper
reliable.
gear, you can start hallucinating.
Bigfoot and
So,
other cryptids,
could be
so
hallucinations. They
always
probably saw like a
reliable.
bear or
And at that
bigger
altitude-
animal up there,
altitudes without the
and they might have thought it
proper
was something else.
gear, you can start
Um,
hallucinating. So, could be hallucinations. They
It's-
probably saw like a bear
It
or
says
bigger
it's
animal.
weird because it's an icy
Something else.
terrain and it's
Um,
and Mount Everest, but so many people have climbed Mount Everest at this time.
It's,
At this point,
it
it's
says
still a small
it's
number
weird 'cause it's
'cause
an icy
people that do that
terrain
are
and it's- and Mount Everest, but
their
so-
brain, they don't
at this point,
think
it's still a small number.
they have a death wish.
People
but,
that do that are their
it's
brain.
for how
they
many
don't
people have
think.
climbed that mountain and it's said to be on that mountain.
They have a death wish.
Nobody in modern history has. Nobody
For how many people
says
have
anything
climbed that
like the
mountain? It's
climbers
said to be on that mountain.
that make it down and they talk
Nobody
and they
in
do the
modern
interviews and
history
stuff. They don't really say
nobody
anything about that. They don't
says
mention
anything,
it at
like the
all.
climbers
Maybe one or two do, but
make it down
it's
and
very
talk.
rare, which I think is very
They don't really
interesting
say
to the
anything
point
about
where
They don't mention it at all.
this
Maybe
is where I
one or
question
two
if
do,
this is
but
just
it's very rare,
tale
which I think
or
is
if it's a
very
possibility of
interesting
actually
to the
being
point
real.
where
This one's very interesting to me because
this
I
is
feel like it
just
would be. I'm not
folktale.
100% sure though.
actually being
Like this
real.
is if there's just any cryptid
This
to be
one's very
possibly real,
interesting
I
to me
think it
because
would be
feel
this one.
like it would-
This one or like your sea serpents and the krakens and
this-
stuff
if there's
because
any cryptid to be
travel
possibly real,
and
I
pushing
think it-
everything down
This
deeper.
one or like your sea
But
serpents and the
Besides
krakens
that,
and
yeah.
stuff,
I
'cause
mean, I see
travel
this
and
being one of the
pushing everything
most
down deeper.
possibly
But
real
Besides
cryptids.
that, yeah. I mean, I see this being one of the most.
Some researchers have said it might be prehistoric. A prehistoric ape creature that's traveled so many generations that it's
that's traveled so many.
it's traveled
generations
through so many generations of
that
folktale that
it's traveled
made
through
such
so
a
many
big
generations of
impact.
folktale
As I said
that
last episode with the
it's-
Yeti. The Yeti was so
made such a
big in
big
media,
impact.
cartoons,
Episode with the
like
Yeti.
cartoons,
Yeti was
comics,
so big in
mainstream media
cartoons,
attention,
cartoons,
Disney World.
comics,
There's a whole ride about
mainstream
it,
media.
which
attention,
one of my favorite rides at Disney, by the way. But
whole ride about
I
it,
feel like
which-
it's weird.
one of my favorite rides at Disney.
This
by the
thing
way.
has been publicized more than
But
any other
I
cryptid,
feel like it's
ever.
weird. This
which
thing has
makes
been
it
publicized more than any
very
other
the
cryptid,
lore very diluted.
which
There's so much about it and so many
the
different
lore
places
very
you can pull
diluted.
from. It's
Um,
very
there's so much
hard
about
to
it and
get
so
like
many
a
different places you can
hard
pull from.
timeline on
It's
this thing.
very hard
Um,
to get like a hard timeline. on this.
Let's see. I mean, there's been relic humanoid species put up by archaeologists.
I mean, there's
paleontologists.
humanoid species put up by
in
archaeologists.
remote regions. I mean, it can
remote
be.
regions.
It can be a number of things that this thing actually
can
is.
be-
It could be prehistoric and just happen
be a
to
number-
so much.
Be prehistoric and just happen
But
to so
I think
much.
I'm gonna wrap
but
this up
I think I'm gonna
in the little speech of the Himalayas mountains.
in the little speech of the Himalayas.
Half the time you don't even that more people die up there than come back down. So it's an interesting.
So
very this is
it's
a
an
very
interesting-
interesting thing.
This is a very
Thanks
interesting
for
thing.
listening to me talk about a
Listen to me talk
creature that
about
might not exist
a
existing for like
creature that
15
might not
minutes.
exist, might
I
exist
enjoyed your time.
for like 15 minutes.
Hope you enjoyed.
I
Make sure to
enjoyed
hit the
your
like
time.
button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that bell while you're at
Hit
it.
the subscribe button
I'll
and
see
hit
you
that bell while you're at it. I'll see
in the
you
next.